Hello everybody and welcome back to our Contemporary House series. In this part we're going to start working on the interior finally and probably some of the kitchen elements. But before we do that we're going to try and add a little bit of a thickness to the floor. If we just hide the garage door here, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for it to be, paper thin essentially. Especially for, sort of a concrete lip. There's usually some sort of height going on in the garage concrete slab. And even into the floor area a little bit into the main room. So we'll actually pull down the house probably a quarter inch or a half of an inch rather than pulling everything up and then having to change the heights of things. So we'll just go in and do that. We'll start doing that by hiding some of these doors. We'll turn off shadows just to increase the performance a little bit. We'll go into the first floor component and we'll then just control pull down, say maybe even just 0.25. It doesn't need to be super thick, and maybe a little bit more than that. Let's say 0.5. And then just reverse the faces there. And then we can go into these elements and pull them down to meet. And if it doesn't have a line across it, we can just draw one in, reverse that face, pull it down to meet the floor. All right, I think that's all the elements. And so now we have some sort of thickness to our floor. And we'll just go and clean this up a little bit, pull those down. And then specifically for, suppose the underside of the door, we'll just pull this out to meet the front of the door. Maybe even a little bit further, say 0.5 of an inch. And then pull this around there. And then we'll pull this piece around the, sort of the back of the door, sort of mini frame, door stop. And then we can go and unhide the rest of our doors. We'll say edit unhide all. And just check how the floor meets up with those. And there's, I don't know what this is, but we'll just pull this down and erase that line. And then pull this out to the front of the door, say another 0.5. And we'll draw a line across here so that our interior floor, when we do add a texture to it, doesn't extend out past the house. This can be sort of maybe a concrete lip or metal or something like that. We'll pull this out 0.5. And then we'll do the same as the back of the house and draw a line across so our interior floor doesn't extend out. And we'll just erase any faces that appear. I think we'll pull this out an inch from the garage. I think actually while we're at this, we can just go and add some sort of give it some sort of threshold look to make it look more like a storm door. Maybe not have a sort of an evident seam where it matches the floor or anything like that. And we'll probably, if we just go into the door as well, add sort of a metal strip on the back as well. And if we just look at the front here. You just draw a seam through the door here until it matches there. And then we can draw a line there, right here and across. And then I think this came out about 1/8 of an inch, so we'll do the same. Pull this little strip across to there. All right. And then we can just pull this strip back in a little bit to meet up with the metal strip on the door. And so I guess that'll do that for the floor. So now let's move on to the interior. So we'll turn off the second floor and the roof. We're down in here to the first floor. And if we just turn on blueprints, and I guess we can hide this blueprint. And we'll probably need to move the blueprints, the first floor blueprint up maybe a little bit just so we can see it. Say unlock. And then move this up an inch. And so now we can see our kitchen. So we have sort of a bar island and our fridge, stove, a couple little these counter modules, and I guess a pantry. And maybe we'll have this be forward facing, maybe side facing, I'm not sure. But I think this will be our general focus for this part. So we will move the blueprint back down again. Actually, we'll go into the first floor and delete the top of our floor. We still have the bottom. But at least this will allow us to see the blueprint without it clipping through the face that was there. And we don't want to change the height of the blueprint for drawing, because then we'll be drawing sort of between the blueprint layer and the floor layer, and it'll cause a lot of confusion later on. So we'll just delete the face for now, and we'll add it back in later. So for the time being, I think we'll draw all of these components outside of the first floor element, and then we can sort of pair them with that layer later on. But we'll go in and draw our counter heights, and that will be 36 inches as standard. And then figure out our other dimensions. And we'll put that about there. We're not going to be super precise about these particular measurements. We're just going to try to get it to match the blueprints as much as possible. And then we'll say 72 inches for height at the moment. Now this will be for the box that the fridge will go in. And fridges are usually between 67 and 70 inches, just so we know that that fits in there for sure. And we'll just increase our field of view here to say 45 degrees, just to give us a little bit more freedom of movement inside the interior space. And then we'll add in the standard sort of counter between the bottom of the cabinets and the counter dimension or distance. This is 18 inches. So we have that. And then for our middle cabinet here, which will be our, I guess our stovetop and oven, is the range hood height is usually between 30 and 36 inches. So we can just say, we'll say 32, and that'll put us there. And I think we'll have our cabinetry go to the ceiling. We'll just draw our line in there. And then we'll basically sort of just draw a box here so we can fill this in. So be the fridge top, and then bring it down here for our counter. And then this will sort of be our pantry area, so we can erase this line. And this will be our cabinets and sort of range hood area. And I'm wondering, maybe we won't do the pantry cabinet. I think what we'll do is just continue I'll erase these lines so that we can have one continuous line. We'll just do, we'll extend the counters all the way to the end. And I guess we'll bring down a sort of a molding to run along the top of the cabinets, and then sort of a spacer. So if we just pull this up, I mean, we don't need super tall cabinets, probably maybe 4 feet. And we might shift the cabinets around a tiny bit, just so we can sort of have 3 equal parts. And then drag it out to the end. And now we can see where we'll have 2 cabinets there, and then we can shift these 2 lines basically to here, so they will sort of fill up where these 2 doors would be, and then we can have sort of 3 equally sized doors on either side of that. And so this sort of open space here will be where the range hood goes, and this will be obviously the bottom of it, but it's not going to fill out this entire space. It'll probably fill out maybe half of this. We'll probably make it about, we'll just see what 8 inches either side looks like. And I think that looks pretty good. Drag this up 5 inches, say. And maybe in a few inches either side as well, maybe 4 inches. And we'll just box those in. And we can probably start erasing our guides now because it's getting a little bit confusing to see. And so now we can pull these out to about here. We'll say 28 inches deep. These actually look a little bit narrower than that, so we'll say 26 inches. And then the fridge depth is usually between, I think it's 36 inches. That's 26. We can add, say, another 5 to that. Maybe one less. Erase these lines. And the cabinet depth above the fridge will meet that. I can erase that line for now, though. And if we just look at the cabinet depth, we can pull it to about there. It says 1'8". And I don't think we want them really that deep, so maybe pull it in another 2 inches. And, obviously we're modifying a lot here, and that's fine. We don't need to follow the blueprint exactly, and it's also not a particularly precise blueprint. It's just sort of something for us to play with, and you can modify it any way you want. If you want to completely change the kitchen or even, have it somewhere else in the house, that's perfectly fine as well. But this is what we're going to do for this one. So we can pull this box out now, and this will meet sort of the front there. Pull both of these out now as well. And so we're just sort of roughly framing up how the kitchen unit would look. And then we can start adding in the details later. We'll pull this out to match that. And we'll just toggle the second floor there for a second so we can see that it matches up properly with the ceiling. And now this, the sort of the range hood middle piece, we'll pull that out, say maybe 2 inches back, and then pull this main piece out to the front of the counter there. And maybe drag it back in a little bit, 2 inches there. And then we have this back section. Now we're not going to delete that line because this will be, I guess, some sort of tiling. And so we can pull this in 0.5 inches as well. And even sort of put maybe a little metal strip along the inside. And I can push that in, say, 1/8 of an inch. Now we can look at our counter. And we can probably drag this down, say, 1.5, just to see what that looks like. I think that looks pretty good. Leave it there. And pull this line in. We'll drag it out 2 inches, both sides. And maybe a little bit less. See what an inch looks like. I think that looks okay. We can obviously change this later as well. Maybe a little bit more, 0.5. Maybe drag this down 1 inch. And at this stage, a lot of it is fine-tuning, just making sure you get things that look right and don't stand out too evidently. And a lot of that's up to you, whatever you feel looks right. And now we can get into doing a little bit more of the finer details now that we sort of have the base structure completed. So we know where the oven's going and the fridge and all of that, so we can get into doing some more of those details. And we'll start with the base here. And so we'll add sort of a kickboard, maybe sort of a 4-inch, say 4 inches. And we'll drag the end in here 1 inch. Maybe this end as well. But the kickboard will be excluded from that height. I'll drag that down. Drag this in 2 inches, we'll say. And so now we're going to try and split this evenly with the top here. And so we'll break this bottom up into 5 equal parts as well. I'll grab all of these and scale them out to the end. Now we can toss our lines in. And then we'll also add in sort of a drawer layer. I'll make that 6 inches deep. Try 5.5. And so this will stretch across all of these. Sort of excluding this one. Not entirely sure yet how we're going to do the oven, if we're going to sort of implement that into the counter. And we may do that as well. We might have some sort of a stovetop element, and then we can just sort of include the oven in underneath here. And then we can go into our offset tool, and we'll offset this 1/16 of an inch. And then that way, when we do this on all of the drawers and cabinets, we'll have an 1/8 inch gap, which would be a little bit more reasonable, I think. And the same as the push-pull tool, if you have the face selected and you double-click the edge line, it will pull it in the same measurement that you had previously selected. So it'll save you a little bit of time. Now we can go in and erase all of these in-between lines, except for the bottoms, where we will go in and just grab these again and then just pull them down to the bottom and sort of exclude them from that gap. And because this was only done on one side, we'll grab both of these lines and pull them in another 1/16 of an inch, and the tops. So now we can grab this sort of in-between face and pull it in, say 1 inch. And that'll just sort of help create the faces of the cabinets and drawers. We just turn back on shadows. We're not going to get a whole lot because we do have elements of a wall around us, but you can sort of get the idea. Turn shadows back off again. And we'll go around and do sort of the same thing with our cabinets. Just pull in 1 inch gap on the side and the bottoms. We can erase our guides. I'll just grab these 2 faces and pull it in 1/8 of an inch. Same with these 2 lines. Just double click there. Then we can drag our guide in, say 1/16 from the center. And we can grab this middle piece again and pull that in another inch. And if you want to go ahead and add maybe the interiors of these cabinets to your model, you can go ahead and do that as well. And normally I probably would, especially if this was maybe a client job or something like that. But in this case, just trying to get through a lot of the material fairly quickly, we're just going to do sort of the faces of the cabinets. We'll just push all of this in an inch, just sort of to expose the tops of the cabinets a little bit. And I think what we'll do, just pull out the tops of this again to sort of make it look a bit more like it's blending in. And we'll have to add in the tops of the doors. So we'll draw that across. I'll pull this in an inch either side and drag a rectangle around here. And then we can pull this in basically to the wall. Erase the bottom. This is where the fridge will go. And maybe what we'll do, let's just try and see what this looks like. We'll pull this down to the bottom and then pull this down there as well. Sort of undoing a little bit of the work that we just did, but just see what it looks like anyway. And rather than boxing them in, I think this looks pretty good. Maybe we'll leave it like that. I think that looks pretty cool. And so, just for uniformity, we'll pull these lines up as well. And we'll put 2 doors above the fridge. So we'll just drag a line to the center. And then essentially pull out a line from the center, a 1/16 of an inch either way. And we'll try and draw a rectangle around this to there. Erase those guides. I can pull this in an inch. That already is. So 1 inch. And then pull these edges in an 1/8 of an inch. And we'll have to go in and draw the bottoms. And not that it really matters, but we will texture them differently later on. So we will draw those in. And so I think for the cabinets themselves, we'll do sort of a circular knob. And if we'll just go to this wall here, as it's part of a component, we can sort of draw on it. Say 40 faces. Just drag this out 3/8 of an inch. Just say G, and we'll say cabinet knob. We can move that to about here. We can get a rough idea of the scale. And move that out to there. And these will just sort of be simple. We can move this out and scale this face up. It's about that size. And if we just measure that, that's about an 1.5 inches across. We can pull this out again, say that far. And we'll just have a gander at the distance from, it's about 9/16 of an inch. We'll make it a little bit further. Pull this out, say to there. Pull this face back to there again. Now we can just pull this in. We'll say 1.5. That's roughly right. Roughly right. And we'll just drag this over on this dimension to about there. So now we'll just grab this one and drag it over to here. So drag this in 1.5, get it close to where it needs to be, about right there. Now we can grab both of these and drag them up to here. And we'll pull them out to make sure they're the right distance. And 1.5. We only need to do it on one side because once it's lined up with one, it should be lined up with the other. And maybe we'll pull them up a little bit higher from the bottom. Say another inch or so. I think that looks a little bit better. And so now we can take these 3, drag them down to these cabinets, and we'll do similar dimensions. So that should now be 2.5 from the top. And now we can work on the drawer handles, and we'll make these about similar dimensions. This is about 4, we'll say 5 inches. So we'll just go over to this wall as it's part of the component, and we'll say 1 by 5 inches. We'll just triple click this and say cabinet handle, and we'll find the center point, and we'll skip this middle piece because that's where the oven will be going. So obviously we won't have a drawer there. And pull this out. This is about 1.5 inches. Maybe pull it in another 1/4. And we'll go with 5/16 the way around. Drag another box in there and then pull this box down to there. And that'll give us sort of a squared off handle. We can erase our guides now. And I think we'll make these a little bit thinner actually. So we'll say 1/8 of an inch on the bottom, 1/8 of an inch on the top. We'll drag this front out And so we'll draw a line about here. And then we can take our arch tool and bring it out, say about there. And then we can offset this inward to about here. And then we can just connect these lines together. And I'll drag this down to erase that bit, erase all these extra little pieces. Then we can push this down and erase that front. So now we have sort of a subtle arch on the front here. And even with these knobs, I think what we'll do is we'll go in and pull them out a 1/16 of an inch. But when we do rendering later and we put sort of a reflective surface on these, it will help to give them a sort of a softer edge around the sides there. I think that'll help make them look even just a little bit better. And we'll increase our field of view a bit more to what will probably be a bit more realistic, say 75 now. So we can have a look at what we got made here. And even turn shadows on, see if we can get the sun to come in across these. Yeah, there we go. And I think this is a step in the right direction. Obviously it's not complete yet. We got to put a bit more detail into the range hood. Put the oven in, figure out what we're doing with that, and put the refrigerator in. But all the same, I think this is looking pretty good. And so we'll probably leave it there for this part, and next time we can get into finishing up some of those details and maybe move on to the island. But thank you everybody for watching, as usual, and I'll see you next time.